Welcome to the Launch Family Podcast, where we make sense of modern parenting one real conversation at a time. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley, a mom of six, former teacher, and your trusted friend helping you cut through the noise of today's parenting overload. Today's guest brings a powerful combination of heart, strategy, and inspiration to the conversation. Dr. Rosner is a certified nonviolence trainer with the Martin Luther King Jr. Center, a leadership coach, and the founder of Debt Free to Dream. Through her company, Love Revolution, she helps families raise children with intention, lead with love, and prepare for the future without the burden of student debt. Dr. Roz, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jessica. It is such a delight to be here and a delight to be a part of this podcast. And you are doing amazing things. I am just truly honored to be.
Well, okay, I'm excited to hear more about your story and your journey. So, can you introduce us a little bit to the vision behind your work with Love Revolution?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So, Love Revolution, it's based on a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. that says, "A social movement that moves merely people is a revolt. But a social movement that transforms both people and institutions is a revolution." And if you think about the word revolution, REVOL, love is in it backward. And honestly, Jessica, if there was ever a time that we needed more love in the world, I do believe it is today. And our mission at Love Revolution is to teach 8 billion people to love 8 billion people one heart at a time.
My gosh, I love that mission. Okay. Well, I want to dive into this more because you had mentioned, Martin Luther King Jr. and that kind of being the inspiration for your business. So, um, how did you become a certified trainer in nonviolence?
Oh, that's a great story. Great question. Um, I grew up in the South. For those of you watching on video, you can see that I'm white. And growing up in Georgia, in the late '80s is when I graduated high school. I graduated into what I was taught both implicitly and really explicitly in a post-racial society. Like there's no more racism, everybody's integrated, everything's all good. And it wasn't until my PhD that I encountered Dr. Cornel West, and he wrote a book called Race Matters. And in there, I started realizing, my high school graduating class was 50% Black, but my college prep classes were absolutely not. And it started opening my eyes. And then I started realizing that, again, implicitly and explicitly, I had been taught that the Civil War was about states' rights, not slavery. And so I really carried that with me until my son was studying US history. And I said to him, and now keep in mind, I had been taught this by high school teachers and college professors. And I said to him, "Now, Alexander, the Civil War was not about slavery, it was about states' rights." And he goes, "Mom, the states' rights to do what?" And I was like, "Ah." And every one of us have a framework. And I am grateful that the framework that I'm given is information comes in and I try to make sense of it. And I don't immediately reject it if it's not fitting a paradigm. And so it really started me on a journey of what I call unlearning and relearning. And through that, I found the King Center on Twitter. Keep in mind, I grew up in Athens, Georgia. The King Center's in Atlanta, Georgia. I currently live in a suburb of Atlanta. And I was 48 years old before I even knew that the King Center existed. So it is possible to grow up and just not encounter Martin Luther King other than the I Have a Dream speech. That's the only thing that I'd ever heard by him. So I started following them on Twitter and they said, "We're offering a 2-day orientation to Dr. King's methodology and philosophy." And I thought, okay, that's it. So I signed up. It was my very first time at the King Center. And something, somehow, some way, that was April of 2018. Some question, somehow that I put together information got me on basically the radar of Dr. Bernice King. And she is the youngest daughter of Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King Jr. and the CEO of the King Center. So in August of 18, she reaches out and she says, sends an email, "I'm assembling a training team. Lots of people are asking us to teach nonviolence around the world. Are you interested?" And I thought, who says no to Dr. Bernice King? Yes, ma'am. I'm interested. Absolutely. Sign me up, whatever it is. And honestly, Jessica, I did not know, would there be, 100 people, 1,000 people? I had no idea. And there are 10 certified trainers and then 3 senior trainers and then Dr. Bernice. So there are just 14 of us in the world. And I study Martin Luther King an hour a day, every single day. It is my passion, and it's what grounds and roots everything that I do. And it is a love-centered philosophy. Even the King Center definition of nonviolence is that it is a love-centered way of thinking, speaking, acting, and engaging, which means everything that I do as a nonviolent practitioner is love-centered. And then from there, I have 2 other pillars in my own personal business as well. So
Okay, well, nonviolence, I think that when it comes to parenting, right? Because we're on a parenting podcast, nonviolence sounds like a great goal for parenting, right? So when it comes to applying this to maybe your journey with your son, or maybe advice that you would give to other parents, how does nonviolence and the work that you've done through the King Center really influence that kind of part of your life?
love, love, love that question. I'm going to tell a story, but before I do, I'm going to say, if you go to thekingcenter.org and you look at the philosophy, there are 6 principles of nonviolence, and then there are 6 steps to addressing conflict. And really, step 1 is information gathering, and step 2 is education. If you as a parent, if you're doing those 2 steps with your children, rather than going straight to your blah, 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 blah. But if you're really saying, help me understand here. I'm curious about blah, 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 blah. And then these underlying principles of nonviolence always chooses love instead of hate. It's believes that the universe is on the side of justice. Nonviolence is courageous. It's a way of life for courageous people. And so all of that, if I wish that I had known nonviolence when I was raising my son. Unfortunately, he was already in college when I encountered this philosophy. But one of the stories that I often talk about when I'm teaching is I was when I was growing up, my parents opted to use a wooden spoon to spank me if I was in trouble. So that's what I did with Alexander. And so we were living at the beach. We were living on an island. And so we were at the beach, but it was at a playground, right in front of the ocean. And he threw sand at some other little boy. And I knew that I should not spank him in front of all those people. So I thought, I will take him behind this tree and spank him. So it's not harmful to his little body, to his little self. And I say this in air quotes for those of you that are just listening. And so basically, what I did is I inflicted violence on my child to teach him to not inflict violence on that child.
Mm.
And when I think about the incongruence of that, and also how I wasn't actively thinking through all of that. I was mirroring, what I had been taught. And so it's really understanding um that violence is never the answer. Violence is, as Mrs. King says, is a descending spiral. And so it really, violence begets more violence, begets more violence. Similarly, love gets you more love, gets you more love, gets you more love. And so if you're love centered, then that's the atmosphere that you're creating.
So what does that look like for a parent to lead with love? Can you give me more examples or stories? Like I'm so excited to have this conversation and just learn from you today.
Yes. So one way is really not having a set in stone way of what your child will and will not be.
Mm.
It's more to allow them to evolve. And I'm talking about personality and likes and dislikes and that kind of thing. Obviously, behavior, we need to mitigate behavior. I have some very, very dear friends that I am very, very close to, and all of their kids call me Ladybug. It's one of I have like 15 babies that call me mama. And one of them, he and his wife have 12 children. And I was just with them not too long ago, and baby number 11 was having a full on tantrum. And he was probably, this has been a couple of years ago now, actually. He was probably two and a half. And so here he is, baby 11, and he is and this mom goes, use your words, use your words, use your words. And I mean, he is just, and she is just this calm, use your words, use your words, use your words. It's okay, use your words. I want to know. Tell mama about it. And he eventually, regulated enough to say whatever, which of course I quite honestly didn't even understand, but she's the mom and she understood. And it just was so powerful to watch that happen, to give our children autonomy, you know, um, even one of the stories that I talk about with my own son that I it is kind of nonviolence adjacent in terms of giving autonomy is Alexander was 3 and we were at his well baby checkup and the doctor said to me, um, does he eat well? And I said yes. Does he eat fruits and vegetables? I said yes. Probably more fruit than vegetables. And he said, what is his favorite fruit? And I'm thinking to myself, he's sitting right here. So I said, Alexander, tell him what your favorite fruit is. And Alexander said, mango. And the doctor said, mango? Mango's your favorite fruit? I don't even know that I've ever had a mango. Is it really your favorite fruit? I said, yeah, it's his favorite fruit. Like just giving these opportunities to be able to speak up for ourselves and speak up for, having children do that. And I watch so many more parents today offer opportunities to develop that. It's really been beautiful.
Love that. And my background is as a public school teacher, so I taught kinder first and second. And then one of the big things that we would do in my classroom was like student choice, right? When it comes down to even an activity, you can give choice within boundaries. Like you can
Yes.
still have that, and that's
Yes.
respectful of them still. That's something that I have 6 children, and I do with most of them, developmentally appropriate choices, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to wear your pink shoes or your purple shoes? But either way, they're putting their shoes on, but
Right.
sometimes just that choice will help motivate them to take the next step on their own.
Right. Exactly. 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 Yeah, that's a great example. That's a great example.
Okay, well then from the parent side, right? So if we're gonna extend this kind of grace and understanding and seek to understand from our children, how does self-love as a parent fit into this equation?
Oh, 1000%. Again, going back to the definition that the King Center uses of nonviolence, that it leads to personal and then cultural and then societal transformation. And so you can't be a nonviolence practitioner with other people if you're not also being nonviolent with yourself. So it is that love centeredness of saying, what choices am I making today? Am I seeking win-win? Am I looking for opportunities for us to grow together and to really seek common ground? Because sometimes things can be really really contentious. I have a friend of mine that was talking about a situation that her nephew was going through in middle school, and essentially um the child did something. The middle school teacher reported it. The middle school administration, gave, a particular punishment or whatever. And the parents were, oh no, this will not happen to our child. And they kind of went in like, you're going to take this off this record. We're not going to do this, blah, 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 blah. My child didn't, blah, blah, blah. And that meeting didn't go well with the administration. And so I think then they escalated maybe to the principal and then it was to the superintendent. And then they were, looking at perhaps getting an attorney. And I think the attorney um, was sort of like, I'm not sure this has reached the level, like, however, I just wonder if the parents had gone in terms of collaboration to say, okay, we each have my child's best interest in heart. Thank you that you do. And also, this is the behavior. This is your understanding of that behavior. This is how you chose to, punish or whatever this looks like. Help me understand how that's helpful. and help me understand how we can, perhaps could we reduce it? Could we, not make, and so somehow, some way linking arms. Educators, well, first of all, Jessica, there is not one person on the planet that I know of that's like, la di da, life is fine and there are no issues or problems. Like everybody is struggling with so much. And, internet, social media, AI, like all the things. And there are a lot of things on the governmental landscape that people are saying, I don't know what higher ed's going to look like. I don't know what my jobs are going to look like. I don't know about all these other things. And so helping being loving with ourselves and being loving with other people to say it is a lot out here right now, and how can we really be intentional about working together and not at cross purposes.
I love that perspective too of like, we're all in this together. We're experiencing this world together, even though our background and experiences are unique to our own. This is one of those things that actually is uniting us in our current present day.
Yes.
And that information is very accessible. We do have the internet, we do have social media. Like we have another podcast episode that we talked about just about the sheer information overload when it comes to just trying to navigate what's best for me, what's best for my family, what's best for my child, and number two and not number 11, or all of the intricacies of even just balancing that. So
Right.
and
Right.
you brought up like education too, which is one of those things that I'm super passionate about. So I want to kind of shift the conversation into talking about debt-free degrees in college. So what
Yes.
do you think that families need to know about planning for a debt-free degree? And also, can you define what that actually is for us?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So debt-free degree came about really because my parents said, you are going to go to college and we do not go into debt for education. And so I would say to parents, from the day you hear me or from day one of birth, whenever it is in this process, my hope is that you would say to each of your children, I expect you to somehow obtain education post high school. So whether it's an internship, an apprenticeship, entrepreneurship, a certificate, technical college, a bachelor's degree, something. I believe everybody needs something post high school. And so I don't know any parent who is having a baby that says, I really just hope that they're a bagger at a grocery store until they retire at 70. I mean, unless they have special needs, I understand that. But like we all have these somewhat aspirations for our kids. And so if you will just add debt free, you
Mm,
will say, I expect you to get some education post high school debt free. That's it. Plant the seed from the very, very, very beginning. Because what's happened is there's this massive algorithm. And I'm curious, even what your experience would be with this, that everybody says take the loans and figure out how to pay it off later. In fact, it's even though my parents drilled it into me, we do not go into debt for education. I'm so old, I was on the quarter system and I wanted to graduate in that 4 years, but I needed a 13th quarter. And so I was going to go to summer school between my junior and senior year. And the scholarships and grants and things that I had for the other 3 quarters, they didn't pay in the summer. And I didn't know that. So I get a bill and it says, you owe $1,000 in like 2 weeks. So I go to financial aid and I'm like, hello, I'm at financial aid and I would like a scholarship for $1,000. They said, oh, honey, we don't have scholarships for in the summer, but here's you a loan paper. It's just $1,000. Just take the loan and figure out how to pay it off later. To which, even with all of things my parents said, I said, absolutely. And I took that loan because I was like, that's what I need to do. Now you magnify that times a million. It is constant. And you hear people talk about, even like student loan forgiveness is a really big topic. Or, if a financial magazine, is talking about finances for, early professionals, it's going to have something in there about how to pay off the loans. Even Jessica, just this week, was networking with somebody, and I said, people who are great for me to network with are financial literacy educators, those that are interested in financial education. and I talked about debt-free degree, I did it 3 times. 3 times this financial literacy educator circled back and came back to what we do is help people with student loans. We restructure those loans so that they pay them off earlier. She could not hear debt-free degree.
Wow. It is definitely like that societal pressure, right? And I think like the narrative of the generations of, oh, you have to go to college in order to get a good job, and then you get a good job to get, the best money and, life situation and lifestyle. But, you know, I'll speak from my own experience is when it came down for me to choose where to do my undergrad, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. In order to be a teacher, I have to go have like a certification to become a teacher. So I have to do an undergrad degree. I ended up getting a couple master's degrees beyond that. But, when it came down to that decision for undergrad, it was, oh, well, this school out of state that's a private institution was cheaper because I got more financial aid than a state
Oh,
school. But
wow.
so I moved across the country
Yeah.
to go do my undergrad. But at the same time, like I still had to take out student loans. So I got private loans, I got government loans. I did have some grants and some scholarships and things. But at the same time, when you're seeing like this sticker price of like 50K or 60K for 1 year, and you're like, oh, well, it's actually only going to be like 15,000 or 10,000. What's that? Like, okay, sure, I'll sign the paper because I'm so close, right? But at the same time, it still is that conversation. That's a huge investment,
Yes.
and not necessarily knowing career trajectories, right? Like we're in this age of technologies. The fact that we're investing so much time and money into these degrees when the jobs may look very different by the time we even graduate.
Right. Right. Right.
Now
Right.
is the time for debt-free degrees. So tell us
Yes.
more. Tell us more.
Yes. Well, so I have the grit blueprint. I use grit in all of my coaching, and the grit blueprint. So this is exactly what I lay out free for hundreds of people, thousands of people every year. Is the grit blueprint to graduating debt free. So the G is grants and scholarships. There is, I estimate, about 46 billion with the B, $46 billion in grants and scholarships out there. Folks say, well, there's no scholarship for me, or I'm a C student, or I can't have scholarships. Well, there are. The flip side of the student loans is 54% of all students who say yes to student loans have no idea what their monthly payment's going to be. And so having this mindset of a debt-free degree is so critically important, because the R in the grit blueprint is return on investment. So it's exactly like what you were saying. So it's looking at, okay, the price tag is 60 grand a year. I've got scholarships down to 10 a year. So that's a good deal, versus I'm going to graduate in 4 years, which is $40,000 in debt. Or many schools, the average graduation rate is 5 years. So that's $50,000 in debt if you stay on that trajectory, if you keep all of those loans and grants and scholarships and all those things. So $50,000 for a teacher who might make $50,000-$60,000 a year, how long is it going to take you to pay that off? And here's the thing, Jessica, because I spent 35 years in and around higher ed, and a lot of that time, some of that time, I was teaching pre-service teachers. And because I love education, I love educators, I love learning, I thought educators were going to be my greatest referral source for debt-free degree.
Mm.
They are awful,
Oh no,
awful.
that
I
is
have a whole debt-free degree club curriculum. I can't make headway. It is like an uphill battle to get folks interested in hearing about debt-free degree, because, and I believe it's because educators are often carrying so much debt because they've not looked at that ROI piece at all. Because education says get more education and you'll get a bump in your pay. And nobody says, how long is this bump in pay going to take me to pay this back? So like I met with an educator not too long ago. She owes $200,000 for all these little degrees and certificates. And I don't mean little as if they're not significant. I mean little as in she has so many of them
Mhm.
because she did it to get pay bumps. But she said, I'll never pay that off. Now, some, it depends. Some loans, I don't know about hers, but some loans, if you pass away, obviously the knowledge has passed away. However, the debt passes to your heirs. Not for all of them, but for some of them. So, she might be in that boat. I do not know. And so looking at that return on investment is so critical. The I is interconnection. So that's the whole work smarter, not harder. And interconnection is a theme in everything that we do. And, obviously with the 8 billion people loving 8 billion people. And it's interconnection in the fact that, okay, if I am going to go get a job as a college student and I'm exchanging my time and talent for somebody else's treasure, OPM, other people's money, then there needs to be either networking opportunities or there needs to be, I get a discount on food, or I know that I can tweak my hours to exactly match my study schedule and my exam, whatever it is. Like you need to be looking at some way, somehow leveraging something that you're going to do anyway and making sure that you're looking at all the interconnected pieces. And then the T is my proven triangle approach. So if you think about a three-legged stool, you've got SM, that's student money. Then you've got FM, that's your friends, your family, your folks, the people you're familiar with. And then we have OPM, which I've already mentioned, which is other people's money. And so every dollar we spend is OPM, because either I've, again, given my time and talent for somebody to give me money, OPM, or I've won the lottery. That's, everybody in the state who contributed to that, OPM, or I inherited it or somebody gave it to me or whatever. But it's all, every dollar we spend is OPM. So how can you leverage OPM to make sure that you're graduating debt free? I'm not aware of there being $46 billion out there to help me get a car or buy a home. But there's that much money in education, plus all the ways to work smarter and not harder, and to think critically about ways to save money. Even down to, Jessica, there are some institutions that will offer an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree, and, perhaps on up.
Mhm.
Times the associate's level classes are at a lower tuition rate than the bachelor's level classes, but the classes count for both. So, like, you can take English 1101 as an associate's level student or English 1101 as a bachelor's level student. And if you do it at that second level, you're paying more for tuition for that class. So it's just figuring out every single place that you can save money so that you're not going into debt.
I love this like visual too of like other people's money. Like, oh yeah, this all makes sense. I also want to like put a plug in there too because the school that I actually got my master's degrees from is called Western Governors University, and they have a very innovative program
Yes.
where you pay for 6 months and you can do as much schooling as you can in that 6 months. Which is also a really great way to save money because it's not like a long-term 5-year thing. Like if you
Yes.
can do it in 6 months, if you can do it in a year, you save a ton on tuition.
Yes,
Um,
yes, yes. I
we,
had one lady telling me I think she did something like 30 credit hours in
yeah,
that or more, because she was intent that she was just going to put her head down and do it. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the institution that also gives you credit for life experience, for work experience. Is that right?
haven't used that personally, so I'm not sure if that's part of the program, but I know that it is for like working professionals. So you can,
Yes.
like discussion boards, you have to like, none of the busy work stuff.
Right.
But it is, you do your final assessment or your final projects, and then you can kind of advance through the courses from there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a huge proponent of, creative educational solutions that help make it more attainable for people. And so I love Debt Free Degree, and I was so excited to chat with you about it today.
Yes.
As a mom myself, we homeschool our children. And so one of the things that we talked about is even being able to maximize that time from like 16, 17, 18, especially knowing like the model of Western Governors or WGU, they could finish their bachelor's program in 2 years while also having like a part-time job to be able to pay for their tuition, which is more
Yes.
manageable.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I love that you bring in all of that into what you do and what you preach and what you sell and the ways you support families is like you got to be a little creative because if you
Right.
just stick with the status quo, you'll end up in, the $200,000 plus range
Right.
without that kind of clear path forward. So
Right.
love that you talked about that too.
Right, right, right. And, for students often they'll say, "Oh, well, I don't know about scholarships and blah blah blah." You can start. I say you can start earning scholarships in fifth grade, and so middle school is a great time to start earning some of these, college scholarships. However, if you go on to Google, they'll have like the Google Doodle. You can earn that scholarship as young as kindergarten.
Wow.
So there are scholarships out there. So, that's also a great time. I mean, with homeschool, you can take I mean, talk about work smarter, not harder and interconnection. You can take a scholarship essay that counts for social studies, it counts for English, and then it also is going to count for, college application, whatever it is. I mean, that's just a great way to repurpose that and to hone that and to tweak that. Really, yeah. I mean, in my opinion, with enough planning, there's no reason to graduate with student loan debt. Um, and so but there are people that don't believe in that concept. There are people who either say it's too hard, or there are some parents who, in a very love-centered way, are dipping into retirement to pay for college, to give their kids the college experience, or who are taking on the loans, and that kind of thing. And I understand that. And so, it's how do we shift the mindset to let's start off with debt-free degree.
I love that. I want to touch back on one thing that you mentioned too, because we do homeschool. And so we could use like a scholarship essay as an assignment. But for the teachers that may be listening in that teach at the secondary level, like I'm wondering why this isn't more ingrained in that culture. Like, could we not be writing scholarship essays together and crafting and going through that process of editing, revising, getting peer feedback to enhance our ability to apply for some of these scholarships? So I just want to like put a pin in that and be like, we have this huge opportunity at the secondary level in education to be able to set kids up to access these types of funds if that's aligned to their, future.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so I also wanted to circle back. But as we wrap up today, we have a final segment where we actually have questions that are written in through Launch Family users. And
Cool.
so one of the questions is, I feel like spot on for our conversation that we were just talking about. A parent asked, college is so expensive. How can I support my child's dreams without going into debt? So I guess like what is your top advice for parents and the things that they can do to help get their child set up for this debt-free
Yes.
educational
Yes,
journey?
that is an excellent question. Whoever asked that brilliant question. I will say, as parents, you're the one setting the tone. You're the one setting the expectations. And I'll say it this way. My parents did not take me to Tiffany and open up the door and go, "Whatever you want, Elizabeth, just pick out anything you want." My parents were like, "Oh, if we're going to buy something, we're not going to buy it at Tiffany, and we're going to buy it here, and our budget's going to be this. And so get anything you want that's in this budget, you know?" And today, again, it is so difficult. It is really, really difficult because almost every industry, like my son just got engaged to his fiance, and they're looking at wedding venues and doing all the things. And I mean, the internet and say yes to the dress and all that. I mean, expectations are up to here. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, to do that thing. Wait, okay, so I got to compromise here and I got to compromise here. And, I was talking to somebody who's a wedding planner, and she said, you can just see their little face, like with more reality than understanding, I'm not going to get what I want. And as parents, if we can set the bar really, really early, you're going to go do exactly what you want to do. In fact, my book is called How to Graduate Without Student Loans While Getting Good Grades, Having Tons of Fun, and Landing Your Dream Job. We want them to land their dream job. And if you begin with the end in mind of landing your dream job, then let's reverse chunk that back. And what does that look like? Do you want a home, or do you want college loans? Do you want a car, or do you want college loans? Because young professionals, with rare exception, have difficulty with a mortgage and a car and loan payments. And so help me understand where you want to put your energy. Help me understand. So it's really that important to you to go into debt for 100 grand, and you understand that the ROI might not be there. You understand that, this is really what it's going to be. Like I had somebody last year at this time who called that said, "Can we have a conversation, with you about debt-free degree?" And I said, "Sure." And their student wasn't on there. Their student, it was May of last year. Their student was going to college that August, and they said he has no concept of 100 grand, what that would mean. Like, just no concept of money. And I understand that parents are busy. Like there's no judgment here. It's just a matter of when you know better, you do better. When you hear the information, you can dig in. And for some people, the status quo is such a draw, and that's literally all they know. And my message has a hard time breaking through because everybody else is saying, we'll just take the loans. And so as parents, whenever you hear this debt-free degree conversation, and one of the things that I do, Jessica, is I do free webinars. So like I'm doing one next week for a neighborhood. It's somebody that heard about me, and it's she and her kids and several kids in the neighborhood and their parents, and I'm delivering a debt-free degree webinar to them. I've got one, I only have one debt-free degree club established right now, and I'd love to establish more. I've got 52 weeks of curriculum, all laid out, ready to go. And, but the one club that I have is at a middle school, and she has gotten somebody at the high school who will start it next year. So these kids will be the first set of kids that will go from middle school to high school in a debt-free degree club. And and I almost guarantee none of them will graduate with any student loan debt because they will understand how to do it. But a debt-free degree is, it's a little bit like calling Weight Watchers today and go, "Listen, my high school reunion's in 2 weeks, and I'd like to lose 100 pounds. And so can you just give me some of those little pills that I can take now, but I can only take them between 8 and 10 a.m. And I want to lose 100 pounds in 2 weeks. Okay. Oh, you can't do that. Oh, well, you stink and you don't work." I mean, that's where we are.
I can completely see that. And I think that's like the eye opening. I don't know if my eyes would get any bigger from this conversation too, for those that are watching, but I think it is really eye opening, right? And we're talking about, you had mentioned financial literacy as being one of those things that it's never too early to start, right? And so I want to jump in here too. And one of the things that we do with our kids is we give them like a birthday budget. And so they get to either do a fun party where it's like $200, or they get to do on their birthday. We give them the option to do like a small, medium, large. And each choice has like a budget limit. And so my son's birthday was this weekend. And he elected to have his like fun splurge day. And so he did like a shopping spree at the Lego store as his large. So he got to spend $100, but it has to be a family experience because a friend thing is a social thing too for a birthday party. So if he has to have like some sort of social element, he can't just go spend $100 on himself. And so, getting his siblings each a little Lego kit. And of course, he got the big one. And then he spent all his birthday just doing Legos together.
Wow, love it.
But it really like positions that kind of like budgeting sort of sense of like, oh, I can have this really big party for 2 hours, or I can also use the money in a different way. And then
Mhm.
it's something that I can maybe keep for longer.
Yes,
So,
love it, love
and
it,
he,
love it.
he just turned 8. So it's never too early. We start that at 5 at our house where they get to choose.
Beautiful.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm all a proponent for that. And I think that to your point too of, that kind of is something that they learn over time and is more that you can ingrain it in your household and in the conversations that you're having. This kind of, we think about it in the adult sense of like, oh, $1 billion is so much we can't even fathom. And that's what 100 grand is. That's what 10 grand is. Like, let's be real
Yes,
here. They don't understand that
right,
$20,000 is a car. So when they're signing up to, signing the name on the lease or the
right,
purchase, they don't understand that concept.
right. Exactly,
Yeah, I
exactly.
love that. Well, any final thoughts or lasting things you want parents to know that might be listening in today?
Just setting those expectations. I'm delighted to come and walk alongside you, particularly with debt free degree, and the leading with love. We didn't really talk about that, but I mean, I do offer that personally, and then obviously circling back to the King Center, there was one example that happened not too long ago, and I it just so encapsulates both the nonviolence, the leading with love, the autonomy. It's I was standing outside a store and waiting for it to open, and it was kind of drizzly. It was in the fall and it was kind of drizzly. And this young child was running by, maybe 3 years old, and he was like zooming up and down the sidewalk. And it was just me, the mom, and this child. And so he was running past me. It was great. I mean, like, wasn't in my way or anything like that. And so anyway, he's running, and she says, blah, blah, do you want to put on your coat? And he goes, no, thank you. And he just zooms past. And she goes, your body, your choices. You go, mama. You go. How powerful is that at that age to hear your body, your choices? And to constantly understand that I'm here to provide parameters for you to make well-informed decisions. Excuse me. And you have the intellect and everything that you need to make this decision. And I know you're going to make a great decision. So,
Love that you reframed that too with like their boundaries are still there, but you do have that autonomy. Like it is your body.
right,
And
right.
the information that they need in order to feel confident in those decisions, I think is, the other big piece of what you do. So, Dr. Roz, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your heart, and your revolutionary message of love with us today, whether it's preparing for the future with a debt-free degree, parenting from a place of nonviolence and compassion, or in just generally your work as a gift to the families that are everywhere. So if you loved today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and check the show notes for ways to connect with Dr. Roz and her resources through Love Revolution. Until next time, remember, love is revolutionary and it starts at home.
Here we go.